Guys, that I'm particularly late today. There was at some point while I was driving in, Kvish Echad just closed. There must have been maybe an accident or something. I don't know. So it much worse traffic than normal. So I apologize again. Okay, so just to get into what we're doing, last week we spent the last couple of weeks talking about the development of the set text, the nusach of Shmona Esrei, and we talked about the history of that. And last week we talked about the particular advantages to having a set text and how it helps us in various different ways. And as we mentioned at the end of last week, what we're going to do this week is we're going to see that the other side of the coin, because even though there are many numerous advantages to having a set text in Tefillah, as many of you have pointed out, there are also some disadvantages. Having a set text can create a certain sense of redundancy. A person can get familiarized with the text, and maybe therefore it loses its meaning. It feels forced. It's not as personal. There are many different reasons why there could be a potential downside to having a set text, and therefore, as part of the full picture of what Chazal created, as we're going to see today, Chazal made sure to still have a second side of the coin, the other side of the coin, which is to find ways to incorporate personal tefillah even within our daily schedule. And there are two different ways that Chazal did that. Number one is they created opportunities for personal tefillah even within what we know as the set text of the Shmona Esrei. That's what I want to start with today. And then the second part is opportunities for personal tefillah throughout the day, even at times that aren't necessarily connected to our regular tefillot. So the first type of personal tefillah that I'd like to explore with you is the personal tefillah that Chazal created that can take place even within the context of our set text. And the first source for this is the Gemara, Masechet Avodah Zarah, source number 1. So here the Chachamim are describing or discussing where and or when a person can incorporate personal tefillah within the set text. So the Gemara quotes a machlokes. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Shoel Adam Tzrachav v'achar kach yitpalel. Rabbi Eliezer says the way it should be is a person should first begin with their personal tefillah, whatever's on their mind, whatever they want to say, and then afterwards they should say the set text of what we call Shmona Esrei. That's what it means by achar kach yitpalel. First, you should ask for your needs, which is a reference to personal needs, personal tefillah, and then afterwards, a person should daven and say the set text. Shene'emar, as the pasuk says in Tehillim, Tefillah le'ani ki ya'atov v'lifnei Hashem yishpoch sicho. The pasuk first refers to an ani who is going to first ya'atov. He'll again. There's different explanations for the word ya'atov. But la'atov means to envelop, and here it's referring to pouring his heart out. First, he should pour his heart out and ask for his personal, and then lifnei Hashem yishpoch sicho, and then afterwards he should give what's called the sicho, and says the Gemara, ein sicha ela tefillah. Sicha we see in a reference in part in Sefer Bereshit, shene'emar vayetzei Yitzchak lasuach b'asadeh, that in Sefer Bereshit the word lasuach is a reference according to Chazal to Yitzchak instituting the tefillah of mincha. So we see that the word sicha is a reference to Shmona Esrei. So this pasuk, according to Rabbi Eliezer, means that a person should first daven whatever they want to say, and then they should say the set text of Shmona Esrei. Yes.
That's just the opposite of what we learned last week about what Moshe has personally demonstrated when he said first praise God, and then said please.
So it's an excellent question. Excellent question, and we're going to see that the next opinion argues and says it should be the exact opposite. But also, the difference is that what we were talking about last time was within the set text, how should that set text be organized? Meaning within the set text, what we have, we should always begin with praise and then begin with asking. This is even saying when we're differentiating between a personal tefillah and then the set text, which will also incorporate both shevach and bakasha, which one comes first? So it's a little bit different, but yes, you are correct that this is going to be a machlokes. Yes, right. So right now, the Gemara is just describing general. Say whatever you want, and then go to the set text. That's the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. We're going to see we don't paskin like Rabbi Eliezer. We differentiate, but it's good to see the development of this in the Gemara. Okay, then comes Rabbi Yoshua. We're on the second line, the end of the second line. Rabbi Yoshua Omer, no, yitpalel v'achar kach yish'al tzrachav. No, what you really should do is the opposite. First, you should say Shemona Esrei, which is going to incorporate everything that Chazal incorporated as a set text. And then at the end, you can add your personal tefillah, what you want to have that's meaningful to you. And he brings a pasuk, Shenemar, the pasuk in Tehillim says, Eshpoch lifanav sichi, tzaratzi lifanav agid. I will pour in front of him my siach, my conversation, which we just saw as a reference to Shemona Esrei. And then, tzarati lifanav agid, all of my pains, all of my tzarot, things that I'm going through, I'm going to share with Hashem. So here, we see that the reference is to the order is to first start with the set text, and then afterwards, you can share whatever you want to. The Gemara, then we're going to skip a little part of the Gemara because it's not as relevant. The Chachamim Omrim, and the third opinion is, Lo kidivrei zeh v'lo kidivrei zeh. Neither one of those are correct. What do we do? Say the Chachamim, Ela shoel adam tzrachav b'shomei tefillah. Rather, when should a person add in their personal tefillah? Not at the beginning, not before the text, not before the set text, not after the set text, but incorporated within the set text. As part of the set text of Shemona Esrei, there are opportunities for a person to combine the set text with personal tefillah. And when is that? So the one example is going to be in the bracha of Shomei Tefillah. As many of us are familiar, and we're going to see this lahalacha as well, that the bracha of Shomei Tefillah is meant to be sort of a catch-all. During that bracha, a person is encouraged, as we're going to see. It's not just allowed. You're encouraged to pause at a certain point in Shomei Tefillah and to add personal tefillot, personal requests in any language that you want. Now, the Gemara doesn't discuss the significance behind these different reasons and why the Chachamim say to do it in the middle and why this person says to do it. They bring psukim. But I think there's tremendous significance in the Chachamim choosing to have it incorporated within the text, rather than having it looked at as this is separate. This is what I say, and this is what I say. This is what I say for myself, and this is what I say for all of OUisrael. Or, and I say this first, and I say the second. I think the significance of incorporating it within the text of Shemona Esrei is meant to show, once again, as the way I've been phrasing it, that they're really two sides of the same coin. Chazal aren't saying you just have this, there's one type of tefillah, and then there's a second type of tefillah. No, there's one tefillah. And that one tefillah, Chazal developed and created a beautiful balance, incorporating opportunities for personal text and personal tefillah, while also ensuring the continued tefillah and all the other advantages that we have when we have a set text. Okay, so far all we've seen, and we're going to see more. So far what we've seen is that there's this opportunity to include personal tefillah in the bracha of Shomei Tefillah. But then the Gemara continues. Amar Rav Yehuda Bered Rav Shmuel Bar Shilat Mishmei Rav. Okay, we have Rav Yehuda, the son of Rav Shmuel Bar Shilat, in the name of Rav. Afal pi, She'amru Shoel Adam Tzrachav B'Shomei Tefillah. Even though we just said that ideally, when should a person add their personal tefillot within the bracha of Shomei Tefillah? Im balomar besof kol bracha ubracha me'ein kol bracha ubracha omer. An additional opportunity to add personal tefillot is not just in Shomei Tefillah, where you can add whatever you want. If there is a theme or there is an issue or something that's important to you, and that specific issue is within theme of one of the other brachot of Shemona Esrei, then you are also invited and even encouraged to add that personal tefillah in the middle of that bracha. For example, the classic example would be if you have a personal thing that you're davening for that's connected to Rifa'enu, that somebody should be healed, you or a family member or a friend, then within the bracha of Rifa'enu, you also have the opportunity to stop and to ask for that refuah in whatever language you'd like, as part of that bracha. I think even specifically Rifa'enu, there's even a text that the Siddurim often bring down where you can add that Yehi Ratzon. But it's not just Rifa'enu. In Barei Chaleinu, which is about sustenance, if a person needs to daven for parnasa, for themselves or for somebody else, that is a great point during the bracha of Barei Chaleinu where you can daven for that. If a person needs to make a decision about a certain decision, and they need help making that decision. You give man the ability to make decisions and the knowledge and the wisdom to make the right decisions. Within that bracha, a person can pause and add a personal tefillah connected to that specific topic. So what the Gemara is saying is there's two opportunities. One is within each bracha, if it's me'ein the bracha, meaning if it's connected to the topic of that bracha. Another example, if you're if a person feels very passionate about, I don't know, about a relative coming back to Israel, let's say, and they want to daven that person should move to Israel. Okay, so during the bracha of, I don't know, Yerushalayim Yircha, or during the bracha of Tekabish Shofar Gadol, or there are various moments where you can find something that's related, that's meaningful to you. Slach Lanu Avinu is another great example. A person feels bad about a certain aveirah that they've done. We've learned this before, but the mitzvah of tshuva doesn't only exist during Asar Simei Tshuva and Elul. Tshuva exists all year round. And if a person feels they committed a certain sin and they want to ask for forgiveness, Slach Lanu Avinu Ki Chatanu is a great opportunity to do that. So the idea here is to say the text. The text needs to be said, and it should be said because that's the text of Chazal. But Chazal incorporated the opportunity to add personal tefillot within each of these. Now, the one thing I just want to comment, and then I'll take questions or comments as well, is where it should be placed. And we're going to see this in the future. Is that it's very important. And again, there's different ways, but the standard approach. I don't have a sitter on me now, but the standard approach is that what you should do is you say for each of these brachot, you definitely have to at least start the bracha, meaning you can't, let's say, start davening for Barech Aleinu for sustenance before you start saying the bracha of Barech Aleinu. You need to start the bracha, and the poskim say you should at least say the first phrase of each bracha. But the standard place where you do it is usually not right before the end bracha, but before the last phrase before the bracha. I'll give you an example. The bracha of Shema Kolenu is the most standard example. Shema Kolenu, many of us are familiar with this idea that you're allowed to add something. Where do you add the piece? You add it right before the words Ki ata shomea tefillah v'sachanun ata. Why? Because that's the end phrase that's like the ending before the end bracha. That's the best point to do it because you're incorporating your personal tefillot within the context of that bracha. You're davening that Hashem should listen to all of our tefillot. Ki ata is already the conclusion of the bracha. And that's the best part to do it. The same thing is with Rifa'enu. I think, again, Kikel Melech Rofein Eman V'Rachaman Ata, that's the end of the bracha. So before the Kikel Melech Rofein Eman V'Rachaman Ata, you should add your personal tefillah. Then say, Kikel Melech Hanun V'Rachum Ata, Baruch Ata Hashem Rofei Cholei OUisrael. And with each of the brachot, you can usually find, if you look in the Siddur, there's that end phrase where we're kind of we're basically concluding the bracha before the actual Baruch Ata Hashem. So it's best to incorporate your personal tefillot within right before that, so that the conclusion incorporates both what the text you've said and your personal tefillot. That answered your question? Okay, great. Yes.
In one of these choices are either prolong your prayer on this.
That's an excellent question. I think it's a personal decision, meaning I don't think that halachically a person can. We're going to see soon that there is a conversation about not making your tefillah too long, but usually that's referenced specifically to the point of tircha tzibur, where you're the chazan or you're one of 10 men, and where if you were to do so, it would cause the rest of the tzibur to. I think the idea of continuing, and we're going to see soon, and it's actually good that you reference this, that there's a way to have your cake and eat it too, which is some poskim recommend specifically adding on all of these things, not at Shomei Tefillah, but at Yiyul Ratzon Im Refi, which is at the end of Shemona Esrei, because that will enable you to answer and still be able to conclude. So I'll explain what I mean by that. But so the answer is that if a person, say, is in the middle of Rifa'enu and they want to spend a lot of time talking about that, and that will cause you to miss Kedusha, I think that's a personal decision, meaning obviously a person should not. The one reason why a person should not take longer for Shemona Esrei is not because they're worried about missing something, but because sometimes when people take a long time, they end up losing concentration. There are some people I know who say that they daven fast because to them that's the easiest way to concentrate is to daven fast. Other people say no, I want to take my time, and so that's a personal decision, and everyone should know what works for them. So I think that the issue of should I daven a little bit longer but miss Kedusha, we do believe that if you're in the middle of Shemona Esrei and they get up to Kedusha and you stay quiet, there's something called Shomea Ka'oneh. If you're listening to the Kedusha, even if you're not saying it, you're considered to be answering halachically. So I think that's totally valid if you're able to concentrate and you feel like it's enhancing your tefillah. So I don't think it's an either or, but as we said, there's ways to have both. Okay, so that is the Gemara. That is the Gemara. There's another part to the Gemara where the Gemara repeats the same idea, where it gives examples, just to actually see it inside. 3 lines from the bottom. Amar Rav Chia bar Ashi Amar Rav. Now we're getting another example of this idea. Afa pisha amru shuel adam tzrachav b'shomei tefillah im yesh lo chole betoch beito. Even though they said you're supposed to do in Shomei Tefillah, if you have specific things to daven for, you can do it in those specific brachot. For example, if you have somebody that's ill, you can include them in the bracha of Rofei Cholei OUisrael. Im Tarich Parnasa, if you need Parnasa, these are the examples I gave as well. Omer B'Birkat Hashanim, you can say the Birkat Hashanim. And therefore, and then Amr Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi continues and concludes this part of the Gemara. Even though it says that a person can add whatever they want in Shomei Tefillah, imba lomar achar tfilato, afilu keseder Yom Kippurim omer. If a person wants to add at the end of davening even more, even if they want to say what he calls the Yom Kippur davening, meaning you're going to say a really, really long davening, you're allowed to do that at the end of Shmoneh Esrei. And that's a reference really to the fact that the other time that you can add extra things in tefillot is really at the end, after you finish the main Shmoneh Esrei and you're already in the middle of Yiyu Ratzon or you're in a Lokai Neshama, that you can add as much as you want, as the poskim are going to say, because at that point you can still answer Amen and answer Kedusha to everything, and therefore you have the opportunity to continue to daven. It's because Elokai Nitzor, without getting into too many of the details, Elokai Nitzor is officially, you've already finished the main text of the tefillah. It's now an opportunity to add additional things that we add. Elokai Nitzor was added later on, and it's really additional piyutim and additional bakashot, requests, and that's a great place to also add on your personal bakashot, because you've finished the Shmoneh Esrei, you can really respond to Chazarat Hashatz, but you still have the ability to add on your personal tefillot. Before Oseh Shalom. Yes, usually the place to do it is right before Yiyu L'Ratzon Imrei Fi. Before you say the words Yiyu L'Ratzon Imrei Fi, that's where you would add. The minhag is basically after you say Hamavarech et OUisrael Bashalom. There, many people have the minhag to say the pasuk Yiyu L'Ratzon Imrei Fi V'Hagion Libi Lefanecha Hashem Tzvi V'Goali, and that now enables you to answer and respond to most things within the Shmoneh Esrei. Not everything, but Kedusha, Kaddish, Amen from almost all of the brachot. Then you say Elokai Nitzor, and before the second Yiyu L'Ratzon Imrei Fi, that's usually the place where a person will stop, and you have the opportunity to add anything you want. No, before the it's Yiyu L'Ratzon. No, Oseh Shalom is after the second Yiyu L'Ratzon, and you're saying it before the second Yiyu L'Ratzon, so it's before. Am I getting confused? No, not the bracha. Are you talking about the bracha mevarechet OUisrael b'shalom or the Oseh Shalom? No, the Oseh Shalom. It's before the Oseh Shalom. Right before the Oseh Shalom, you say the phrase Yiyu L'Ratzon Imrei Fi V'Hagion Libi Lefanecha Hashem Tzvi V'Goali. You say that a second time. Before that Yiyu L'Ratzon, so it's before Oseh Shalom. That's the place where you would stop and add any additional tefillot that you would like to add. That you say once, then you start Elokai Nitzor, and right before the second Yiyu L'Ratzon. I don't think so. No, yeah.
It's right before.
It's right before. You can. I'm just going to go on, but please double check. Yeah, there's a different text. Okay, I'm just going to go on, just so I don't want to because of time, but you're welcome to check it. But I'm pretty sure that it's before. It's before the Yiyu L'Ratzon. And many Siddurim will have a little star. Before the second Yiyu L'Ratzon, where at that point you can. Some people have the minhag to add a pasuk that's connected to their name. That's a point that many people are signified in the Siddur. Oh, you're talking about Yiyu Ratzon. You're talking about the second Yiyu Ratzon, not Yiyu L'Ratzon. No. Yeah. There's Yiyu L'Ratzon Imrei Fi V'Hagion Libi Lefanecha.
Then you say Oseh Shalom, and then you have
Shei B'nei Beit HaMikdash Me'ir Rabbi Amenu. That's something else. Yeah, but that's a different. That's not Yiyu L'Ratzon. That's Yihi Ratzon L'Fanecha. It's a different text. It's a different text. I'm referring to the Yiyu L'Ratzon, not Yihi Ratzon. It's a different text. Exactly, right there. Before that one, and many Siddurim have a mark there that you can do. Okay, let's keep going just because of time, because I came late here. Now the Gemara, there's a second Gemara that limits this a little bit, and that Gemara is in source number 2, the Gemara in Brachos Lamed Aleph, that points out that this doesn't mean that a person can add any of the brachot of Shmoneh Esrei. We've seen this before, but it's important to see it again. Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav Yehuda, La'olam al yish'al adam tzrachav lo b'shalosh rishonot v'lo b'shalosh achronot ela be'emtzayot. A person may never add their own personal requests during the first 3 brachot of Shmoneh Esrei or the last 3 brachot of Shmoneh Esrei, only during the middle ones. Why? Because as we know, the Amar Rabbi Chanina, Rishonot, if you were to add it, what are the Rishonot? What are the first 3 brachot? Dome le'eved, they are Dome le'eved shemisader shevach lifnei rabo. The Rishonot, the first three brachot are meant to be praises. You go in and you initiate that conversation where you praising HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's not appropriate for me to add anything specific during or personal during those first three brachot. Emtsayot, the middle brachot, Dome le'eved shemivakesh pras mirabo. And that's like an eved, like a servant who's asking something from their master, and then it's appropriate to add your own personal. Achronot, and the last ones, Dome le'eved shekibel pras mirabo. It's similar to an eved who already received something from his master. V'niftar v'holechlo, and now he's going and he's thanking him before he leaves. And because the first three brachot are for shevach, for praise, and the last three are specifically for what we would call hoda'ah, thanks, it's not appropriate for you to add personal requests during those tefillot. Tosfos, right here on the spot, makes an important point, and he points out that when we say that a person shouldn't add special requests during the first three brachot or the last three brachot, that's only if we're doing it as a yachid, as an individual. As a community, we actually do have the minhag as a tzibor to add. For example, during Aseres Yemei Tshuva, we add Zachrenu L'chaim. We add things. We add Sefer Chaim Bracha V'Shalom, right? We do add certain things. Why are we doing that? And the answer is, there's a difference between Yachid and Rabbim, that a tzibor is allowed to insert special requests even during the first three or the last three brachot. When we say that a person should do it, it means individuals. Individuals shouldn't add their own personal requests, but it is appropriate for the tzibor when it is warranted, with Yalav Yavo, or Anisim is more thanks than there's anything else, or specifically Aseres Yemei Tshuva, to add certain things, because that is as a tzibor and not necessarily our own personal requests. Okay, the Rambam in source number 3 summarizes what we've seen so far, and he says the following. Source number 3: Hamit palel ematzibur. If a person is davening with the tzibur, first he says lo ya'arich et tfilato yoter midai. You shouldn't make it too long. Now, what does it mean if you're davening with the tzibur? You shouldn't make it too long. It seems what he's referencing is, as I said before, somebody who is either the chazan or he's needed for the minyan. Meaning it's inappropriate for you to daven too long if that's going to cause what's called tircha de tzibura. It's going to cause a bother to the tzibur. If the tzibur is waiting for you, so it's not appropriate for you to all of a sudden have so much kavana that everyone's standing around waiting for you to finish. Aval beino levein atzmo harishut biyado. But if we're talking about a case where you're not impacting anybody else, then you're welcome to have a longer tefillah as much as you would like. V'im ba lomar achar tfilato. And if you want to add at the end of your tefillah, which is what we're referring to during Elokai Nitzur, afilu keseder v'vidu Yom HaKippurim omer. You're allowed to say as much as you want, even as long as the vidu of Yom Kippur, which is reference to having a long addition. You're allowed to add whatever you want. V'chein im ratza lahosif bechol bracha ubracha min ha'emtzayot me'en ha'brachot mosif. And the same thing would be true if a person within each specific bracha wants to add a personal request that it is me'ein, that is part of the topic of that bracha. You're allowed to. Ketzad, what's an example? Says the Rambam, Hayelo chole, if you know someone who's sick, mivakesh olav rachamim, b'berkat cholim lifnei kifit sachut lishono. You're allowed to ask for mercy for that person in the bracha of rofei chole in your own language. However you want to say it. You're allowed to say it in English. You can say it in French. You can say it in whatever language you want, in any way that will make it meaningful for you. Hayat tzarech leparnasa. Mosif tachana ubakasha b'berkat hashanim. If you need parnasa, you can add your own personal request in the bracha of berkat hashanim. Ve'al derech zeh b'kol achat mehem, and the same thing applies to each of the middle brachot. Ve'im ratzah l'shol kol tzarchav, if you want to add anything, b'shomei tefillah shoel. You're allowed to in shomei tefillah. That is what we would call the catch-all. That bracha, you're allowed to add anything. It doesn't need to be me'ein the bracha, because shomei tefillah is all about asking Hashem to listen to us, and that can apply to anything. And then he adds, aval lo yishol lo b'shalosh rishonot v'lo b'shalosh achronot. And then he summarizes and brings in the second Gemara that we saw, but you're not allowed to add in the first three brachot or the last three brachot. Yes. Good. We started mentioning that. We're going to see that right now. Many poskim point out, and again, we're not going to see this inside, but the Mishnah Berurah, the Shulchan Aruch, Rav Yosef Karo in source number 4, brings this down lahalacha. Okay, we're not going to see it inside for time. It's really basically bringing down the same thing that we just mentioned as well. That you can add anything you want in any of the brachot if it's connected to the bracha, and then he adds that you can do the same thing in Shomei Tefillah. And then the Mishnah Berurah and a number of people point out that it's probably better to do it at the end of Shmona Esrei and Yehula Ratzon, and not necessarily to do it in Shomei Tefillah, although a person has the choice to do whichever one they want. Let's say they're afraid that they're not going to remember by the time they get to Yul Ratzon, or something's bo'er, something's very important to them, and they want to be able to, and Shomei Tefillah is when they feel that, again, we all know that tefillah waxes and wanes. There are times where we're more focused, times where we're less focused, times where we want to say something. And so therefore, Shomei Tefillah is considered an appropriate time. But there are two reasons why they say it's better, especially if you have a lot to say it at the end of Yul Ratzon. What are the two reasons that you say Yul Ratzon? So if you look in source number 4, right after the Shulchan Aruch, the Mishnah Brura. The Mishnah Brura is a commentary, is the Chafetz Chaim's commentary on the Shulchan Aruch. So in source number in Yud Bet, where it says Bibracha, so says the Mishnah Brura, Afilu b'birkas shomei tefillah v'kol shekain b'shar tefillot, meaning you're allowed to add anything in all of the brachot if it's connected to the bracha, and certainly in shomei tefillah. Aval le'achar hatefillah, afilu kodem yiyul ratzon, but when it comes to the tefillah, after the tefillah, i.e. during Elokai Nitzor, before the words, the second yiyul ratzon, mutar laharich b'chol gavnei, you can add as much as you want. Why? It seems like he's basically saying that that because practically you're not going to miss out on missing kedusha and on missing any of those other things. So that's one reason that some poskim say it's better to say most of it at the end of Yul Ratzon. Rav Melamed in source number 6 in Pnei Halacha, this actually brings another reason why he thinks it's better to do it at the end of Yul Ratzon and not to necessarily do it during Shomei Tefillah. Look at source number 6. Lidat Rabim, according to most poskim, Tov shehamitpalel Yosif bakashot mishelo. It is appropriate for someone who is davening to add his own requests. Mipnei shehatfilot ha'ishiyot she'adam omer b'lishono yotzot me'omek halev u'me'ororot et hakavana. Okay, because when a person is adding on their personal tefillah, it very often becomes more personal and becomes more meaningful. So this is important. It's not just, and this is an important point, and I said this before, it's not just that the rabbis let you add your own personal tefillah, like, okay, we have to give them this little, no. This is encouraged. We're going to see in a minute that even the Mishnah Brura, the Chafetz Chaim in the Mishnah Brura says you should do this. We want you to do this because we know that this will hopefully enhance all of your overall tefillah experience. Ella, continues Rav Melamed, it is ideal, it is preferred that a person does not go too long on personal tefillot in the middle of Shemona Esrei, va'afilu lo b'shomei tefillah, even not too much in Shomei tefillah. Why not? Mipnei she'ikar nusach tefillah mechuvan linyanei haklal. Because in the end of the day, although we encourage you and we incorporate personal tefillah, we have to remember that when Chazal set the text, that is the main text. The main text is tefillah for everybody and not just focusing on yourself. If we end up spending most of the time on our own personal tefillot, if we spend too much time on our personal stuff and we don't spend enough time on the set text, what we're basically saying is, I only care about my own personal tefillot and not the set text that's meant to be a tefillah for all of OUisrael. And therefore, the ideal is you should incorporate these personal tefillot, but you shouldn't go too long. You shouldn't add too much. If you feel the need to add too much, better to do that at the end, after you've said all of the Shemona Esrei, where you've prioritized the main text, davening for all of Klal Yisrael, then you're allowed to add whatever you want. That's what he says right now. If somebody feels the need to add a lot of personal tefillah, yoter tov sheyivakshem achar sheyisayim et habrachot. After you finish Shemona Esrei, v'yomar yiyul ratzon, and you said the first yiyul ratzon, then you can add there, right before the second yiyul ratzon, you can add what you want. Shekol mashu omer achar kach kvar eino meikar hatfilah. It's not within the context of the main text. Aval hu tosefet hashayechet letfilah. It's part of the addendum that you're adding onto the tefillah. Shekol zman shelo pasa shloshat sa'adim lachor. Because as long as you have not yet taken the 3 steps back and said the Oseh Shalom, adayin hu omed lefanav yitbarach b'tfilah. You're still standing in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So what Rav Melamed is suggesting, there's really 2 reasons why there is a preference that if you have a lot to add, you should add it in Yiyul Ratzon and not in Shomei Tefillah. One is practical, because that way you can still answer Chazarat HaShatz, or most of Chazarat HaShatz, while you're in your own personal Tefillah. Number two, in terms of how it appears, or in terms of a sense of priorities, this way you finish the main text, which is the text that Chazal instituted, reminding us to daven for the tzibur, reminding us to daven for all of OUisrael, and not just focusing on our personal needs. And then afterwards, you're welcome to add as much personal as you would like to. But again, I do want to stress that you still are, if somebody feels strongly that they want to add it in Shomei Tefillah, or they want to add it within the specific brachot, you're allowed to. This is just a recommendation that is made, and it's better to do it towards the end. But everyone should find a way that's meaningful for them and add it then. Yes. Absolutely. That's what we said. Meaning within each tefillah you are welcome to add, and
some people have one person that they're saying you're fighting for, and others have kind of 15.
so good. I think that they talk about both one. I would say the following, and this is my own understanding of it, is the following. I think if a person feels specifically, and most of us will, that in the bracha of Rifa'inu, that feels like the most natural time to daven for refuah. So I think if you're talking about something that's specific to what we call me'ein habracha, okay, or let's say somebody personally needs to daven for parnasa, so then the real natural place to do that is in the bracha of Barech Aleinu, or like we said, somebody has a sin that they committed and they want tshuva, so slach one was a natural place to do that, as opposed to just putting that all at the end. I think if you're doing a me'ein habracha, it's appropriate to add it. Ideally, you shouldn't, as we say in Hebrew, be magzim. You shouldn't, start saying 100 names, but to say 15 names, 20 names, that's considered appropriate. And I think that's fine, because that would probably be the most natural place that we would want to add it in. I think if you're debating between Shomei Tefillah as a catch-all or Yiyul Ratzon as a catch-all, better to wait to Yiyul Ratzon simply because it enables you, because of what we just discussed. So I think it's a personal decision. I don't think there's a clear right or wrong on this. It's more a matter of what's meaningful for some people. I know there are some people who don't want to wait till Yiyul Ratzon because they're afraid. It's happened to me a couple of times where I'm like planning on it, and then you return them, and then before I know it, I've already taken the 3 steps back. I'm like, I lost the opportunity. Meaning, obviously, you didn't fully lose the opportunity, because as we're going to see, you can dive into Hashem even outside the context of set prayer. But meaning, so I think everyone should really, in their own way, find it where it's meaningful. It is recommended, as they say, to do it towards the end, but it isn't required. There's a reason why the Gemara says you can add it in during each of these brachot, if it's me'ein habracha, or they initially listed Shomei Tefillah, because that's considered appropriate if that's what's most meaningful. Yes.
Bracha Rifa'inu ends with TORAH OUIsrael. If you have a non-Jewish person that you read for include that in that bracha.
Excellent question. I don't know. I think it's an excellent question. I'm not sure. Very good. I don't know. I assume that would be something that you'd probably do towards the end, because you are correct. Rafei Cholei Yisrael seems to refer specifically to Cholei Yisrael. It's a good question. Yes.
At the end, first of all, most Sidurim, it's beautiful today, really tell you, it has an article and many others where you stop and Shema Koleinu.
Yes, many Sidurim do have that. Correct.
It says add the pasukim with your name.
Yes, many people have that minhag to do that.
So
That point. Yes, I don't. Yeah, so that's a good question. I don't know if it matters necessarily the order. Many people have the minhag to add a pasuk that's connected to your name. That's the place, and that's also the place where you can add whatever you want, as much as you want. Yeah, and then you can add your own personal tefillah in English. Now, what I want to just also note is that, as I said, just to show that this is something that's not just allowed but is recommended. Look at the Mishnah Berurah in source number 5. We're going to go back to source number 5 for 1 second, where he quotes the Chai Adam, again, another big another big posek that says that this is something that's appropriate to do. Katav Chai Adam, nachon v'ra'oi lechol adam lehitpalel b'kol yom b'yichud al tzrachav uparnasato. These are the things that a person should daven for. He's giving you advice. Remember we talked about how Chazal in their set text told us what we should be davening for? The Chai Adam says these are the things you should be davening for. You should be davening every day for your needs, for parnasa, V'shelo yamush haTorah mipi zaro v'zera zaro, and that Torah and the traditions of our yadus should continue through your children and grandchildren. V'sheyu kol yotzei chalatzav ovdei Hashem be'emet, and that all of your descendants should be ovdei Hashem. V'shelo yimtza chat v'shalom psul b'zaro, and that you shouldn't have a puzzle in your descendants. V'chol mash yodeh b'libo shetzarich lo, and anything that you know that you need, you should daven for. V'im ena yodea v'daber tzachut b'lashon hakodesh. And if you don't think that you can express yourself clearly in Hebrew, yomarna af b'lashon Ashkenaz rak sheyeh mikirot libo. You can say it in any language you want, as long as it's coming from the depths of your heart. V'tov yoter likboa tefilot al kol ha'inyanim hatzrichim lo achar shesiyem kol hayudches. Now he's going to basically say it's best to do this, as we mentioned, after Shmona Esrei. Milikavam b'birkat Shmona. It's better to do it after Shmona Esrei as opposed to during Shomei Tefillah. Kedei sheyitztarech lanot kadish o kedusha yeh yachol lanot achar amirato yiyu l'ratzon l'kulei alma. Because since if the tzibur gets to Kaddish Kedusha, since you said the first Yiyu L'Ratzon after Sim Shalom, you're able to answer. Okay, so we're not going to be able to get to the second part. We'll have to save that. You'll have to stay in suspense till next week. But what we saw today was that Chazal, in their infinite wisdom, I really believe that, as they established a set text for numerous different reasons, made sure and understood that there is a need for personal tefillah, that a person connects to tefillah that is personal, tefillah that comes from the heart. And therefore, Chazal instituted the opportunity to add that to your tefillah, not just before your main tefillah, not after your main tefillah, but incorporated within the tefillah, because they really are two sides of the same coin. A person should say the set text that Chazal have instituted because it keeps a certain tradition. It ensures that we're going to daven. It connects us to all of OUisrael. It has special koach, as we know, all the different reasons that we saw the last couple of weeks. But at the same time, a person needs to be able to incorporate their personal tefillah and make it as personal, as meaningful as possible. And therefore, Chazal created this beautiful balance, enabling us to have the set text, but to also have an opportunity within that set text to add our own, as we say, nofech mishelanu, our own little pearl, our own little part of the tefillah, in order to connect to it and to make the tefillah as meaningful as possible. Next week, what we're going to see is the last aspect of tefillah, which I think is the most least understood and the most underestimated, which is the opportunity to dive into Hashem outside of the context of these three tefillot, which is whenever you want, wherever you are, whenever you are. We will remember, as we'll see, that this was what main tefillah used to be, according to the Rambam, and it still exists today. We just very often don't realize it. We don't take advantage of it, and we'll talk about that next week, Be'ezrat Hashem. Have a great week, everybody. Again, I apologize that I came late.